Madam Clerk, if you will, please, you got the floor.
We have a tie, so what we'll need to do, I did not even tally the alternate members at this point, so we need to vote to break the tie. We could do it out loud, or we could do that by ballot, and then I thought I would pass out fresh ballots for the alternates based on what we did with the regulars, because it's getting a little
Okay.
Board of Adjustment. The tie is between Ben Baker and Larry Reinhardt. So, do you guys want to vote out loud, or do you want to do that on the ballot?
Can you break the tie?
Not y'all are, this
You
is
guys
up
can
you
just
guys.
re-vote out loud if you,
Yeah.
because there's,
We can change our mind if we
well,
tie.
one person did not vote for either of those, so.
Okay.
So if you did a revote, it should, if it's.
Pass it out and let 'em
Larry
vote.
Reinhardt?
Ben Baker?
Reinhardt?
Reinhardt.
Reinhardt. 4-1.
4-1, okay. Now I'm gonna give everybody a fresh one. We will need one alternate. Sorry.
You excluded
One alternate.
One alternate.
One alternate. So I have to sign.
Oh, sorry. Keep them, but if you want to announce that.
All right, Mr. Dennis Harrington, you're the alternate, sir. Congratulations.
That brings us to Parks and Rec.
All right, Parks and Rec, you've got the ballots there in your stack.
Everybody should still have those ones in their stack at their desk. Unless you
No, you have asked them in.
I did not see that. Move on if you want. If you want.
Next one's easy, 13.
All right, we're gonna move along to number 13, and when we finish 13, we'll come back to the election results, okay? Discussion and possible nomination of board member to the executive secretary position.
I'd motion to nominate John for the position of Executive Secretary.
Second.
A motion second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations, John. You're the
Are you
executive.
sure?
Well,
Can I make a comment before we go forward with this? This is a new position, but in most regards, nothing changes. We have a senior member of our board, the Board of Commissioners. It's the mayor. If the mayor wants an item on the agenda, it's going on the agenda. We have a town manager who we've picked to run the town. If he has an item he wants on the agenda, it's going on the agenda. My job is going to be to make sure that all the materials get out earlier than they did in the past, so you can see the things that are on the agenda a few days before we have the meeting, and you can think about it and do some research about it. That's all. So this is not a big deal. Nothing changes from our mayor, nothing changes from our town manager, and we go forward from there.
all right. All right, back to number 12C. Becky Willis. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep,
Parks and Rec.
for Parks and Rec. Congratulations. I think,
You here?
is she here?
Yep, she's still here. Yes, she is.
All right. We are now number 14. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. We have another issue to deal with in regards to,
Item number 12. Recognizing we have essentially reversed course on the changes we've made and the restrictions we placed on some of these boards, I move that we, if he is so inclined to accept, that we rescind that we reinstate Mr. Ray Martin as the chair of the P and Z if he is willing to do so.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, second discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No,
I just have to make a comment, I'm sorry. That would
that's the new
void
agenda.
the P and Z that we,
Right.
the action that we took on P and Z, because we wouldn't need a member at that point. But as long as you guys are okay with that, I just wanted to mention that.
Y'all filled all the chairs with your
Right.
P and Z vote.
Right.
Okay, I withdraw my motion and
What does the rule book say when you?
We,
Because it was called and we voted.
we voted, so now we've got to, well, they can vote again. You can just put the same motion forward and they can defeat it if that's what you want to do.
I understand that I apologize, the public is going to take more time to do this, but it was not my understanding that we were, by designating those members, Heather, to the P and Z board, that we were, I understand now, of course, they're going to choose a chair. But I still move, I would like to
That's what I mean.
reduce that by one number so that I can make my motion.
So the P and Z that we just voted on, just make that action null. Is that correct? We don't,
Yeah,
what we
it-
just voted on, we don't need to
should have
do
done
the
it
P and Z
before.
portion of it.
Right.
Okay, absolutely.
So do we need to have a motion to?
Yes, sir.
Do away with that vote and then,
Madam Clerk, state that motion, please, the way you want it.
The way I would want it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Motion motion to fill the vacancy on the planning and zoning board with Ralph Martin would be the way I prefer it.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? All right, and you made the motion?
Yes, and I
And
concur.
who seconded
second.
it? Mr. Kaiser? Any discussion?
Hold on just a second, if you don't mind.
Did twice, so it's just, I mean, we could say.
You're gonna have to nullify your
The vote, okay.
fifth
Nullify.
seat, filling the fifth seat, and then appoint Ralph to that seat, if that's what you want.
That would be perfect.
Okay.
Ms. Hewitt, will you make a motion that,
I'll state a motion.
state a motion?
The motion
I know
would be
he'll make
to
it.
nullify the vote on the regular seat for the Planning and Zoning Board, and then to fill that vacancy if Mr. Martin is so inclined, by him.
I so move.
Okay.
And Mr. Kaiser, you second.
Second.
Everybody understand the motion? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
4-1, Madam Clerk. Okay. All right, do we need to do anything else about alternates or anything like that? Everything's fine? Ready to move on? Okay. We've done number 13, right? Are we on number 14?
Yep.
Okay. Discussion and possible approval of ordinance 16-02. Mr. Hewitt, do you want to speak to that, or who wants?
I'll-
Mr. Fletcher, that's you.
I'll do that, Mr. Mayor, yes. At our last meeting, we proposed an audit committee be established again for the island. Since then, the recommendation of the University of North Carolina School of Government is that we have an audit committee. The recommendation of our external audit firm is that we have an audit committee. And the recommendation of our town manager is that we have an audit committee. I sat with the town manager and have developed a list of functions that this audit committee will perform, and they are to assist and advise the BOC in its oversight responsibilities for the town's financial reporting process, system of internal controls over financial reporting, and external audit process, to evaluate the performance of the external audit firm as it relates to the annual audit of the town of Holden Beach, 3, where appropriate, to review proposals from alternative external audit firms and recommend retention or selection action to the Board of Commissioners. Number 4, in consultation with the town manager, review, advise, and make recommendations to the BOC with respect to the town's treasury management function and its risk management policies and procedures, including without limitation the town's insurance and self-insurance policies. And lastly, such other related functions as shall be delegated or assigned to it by the BOC from time to time. So the rest stays the same. Those are the agreed upon responsibilities for the audit committee. I move that we adopt this ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Number 15, discussion and possible nomination of board member to chair the audit committee. Mr. Fletcher, is that you? Who's going to speak to that?
I think that Dolly has raised for us, you know, an issue of having a commissioner sit on that committee. So I'd just be interested to hear what the other commissioners think about that before we start nominating somebody. Personally, I felt like it was important for one of the commissioners to be a part of that committee. Not, I don't know about chairman, but to be a part of the committee. But I'd just like to hear what you think about that. I had always thought when we came up with this that John Fletcher would be perfect for this because of his background. But I want to hear what the other commissioners think.
What's the history? We had an audit committee. There's been other audit committees. Has a commissioner ever been served on it? Okay.
It's my experience that when you have a commissioner on a committee, the committee defaults to the commissioner. They default to whatever he wants, whatever he thinks. You no longer have a committee of 3, you have a committee of 1, because that's just the way people are. So my thought would be there shouldn't be a commissioner on it, if you really want it to be a committee of 3.
And that's consistent with what I have been informed, that commissioners they aren't necessarily restricted, but they should not attend committees that are appointed by the commissioners because of their real or perceived influence on the outcome.
That's correct.
I don't disagree, but is this a question? Is the audit committee, the other committees are advisory. Is the audit committee, other than advisory, it's more of a, it is advisory as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
For example, the Board of Adjustments is not advisory committee. It's a judicial committee, so that's,
Totally different.
What, just, can I add in that y'all adopted an ordinance that
States
says
that.
Yep,
that?
yep, yep.
States that.
Okay.
we'd have to modify that, amend that. So I think, so Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we defer this or not
You'll put it on next month's agenda?
put on next month's agenda, and also we'll put the agenda on to update, amend the previous ordinance.
All right, you guys ready to move on?
Yep.
All right, moving on.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, you understand what we're doing on that?
Yes, sir.
All right. 17, 16, discussion and possible action on annual auditing services. Hey, you still here?
Speaking of auditors, your contract with Thompson, Price, et cetera, will be up in April. So it is our recommendation that you guys decide whether or not you want to continue that contract or search for new auditors for our June 30 audit.
I have a question, if it's appropriate here. What was was there a reason why Martin Starnes and Associates were used from 2008 to 2011, then we went back to Thompson, Price, Scott, Adams?
That was before my time, so
Okay.
I
It was-
don't know
it was,
why they made that decision.
Just a board decision to change auditors as a convenience. There was no bad reason. There was no problem with it. It was just decided that to change auditors for the,
What was our experience with Martin Starnes and Associates? Or
They were
is
great.
anybody here to speak to it?
They were great. I mean, they've all been good. I mean,
And, yeah, and the same
Negative
question,
feedback
what's our
on them.
experience with the current Thompson
He's
Price?
done it for years,
Okay.
off and on.
No bad experience as well, okay.
It's pretty common practice that we don't get locked in for numerous years back to back to back to back.
That's what I was saying.
So you need to change off. It's kind of an unspoken practice, you know.
So if we,
New eyes can take a look
That's
at it.
right.
yeah,
We've never had any problem with any of our auditors, to my knowledge, since 1969.
does the town have a proposal? The staff?
Recommendation?
I hesitate, I hesitate to pick the auditor because it's my work that's being audited.
Very true.
Good point.
Good point.
But on the other side, the idea with the auditors is if you change auditors, that new auditor is not nearly as effective as the one who just left. And we haven't had this auditor that long, and they're doing a good job. The town's happy with them. I'd see no need this year to make that change. They're 1 year at a time anyway, but they're doing a good job. They're pretty much dictated by the state as to what they actually do in the audit. We might ask the audit committee to make sure they're through as fast as they can be, so that we get the audit committee out, the report out earlier than we might have in the past, if it's possible.
The thing to remember about that is they have a deadline that's set by the state where they have to have it to the state by the deadline.
Right,
Then the state gets it and we don't get it back till they get it done.
sure.
It's kind of like Tim was discussing before. The government gets done with it when the
When
government
it's
gets
done.
done with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's within 30 days, sometimes it's within 3.5 months.
But our audit committee will be working with the auditor, and if there comes the issue that we need to change, then we'll do that.
No, it's a year contract, it's a
No,
contract.
yeah, but I'm talking about, they'll be working.
Yeah,
with-
next
if
year.
Next year we need to do it, we do it.
Oh, next year, right.
So do we need a motion to? I
Approve one
move,
of three.
so I'll move we renew
What,
contract with Thomas Price, or whatever the wording's supposed to be.
what we would propose is to bring the new annual contract to you at the next meeting for your consideration.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
Yeah, that,
That's fine, that way you approve the contract.
all right.
That's good.
So you have the direction you need.
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Good.
that's a wonderful job. Thank you. Okay. Number 17,
See if this one's continued.
discussion and possible approval of Resolution 16-01. Resolution approving BB&T signature card.
I'll make a motion we approve 16-01.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, say no. Madam Clerk, unanimous. 18, discussion and possible approval of components of Bridgeview Park. You want to tell us where we are,
This is Christie.
Christie?
Good evening. In the interest of time, I'm going to try to take my talking points that I was going to tell you guys and condense those down a little bit, but there are at least a couple of questions from a member of the community that I want to make sure that I do answer. So I know from the orientation session that you guys learned about town projects and There are dollar figures associated with those, but here tonight, we, due to the timeliness of these different elements, we need to decide whether we're gonna move forward with park elements or whether we're gonna back away from those. The first item to consider that I wanna touch on is the multipurpose court. That one's probably the most talked about in any rec board meeting, and the member who really stuck with that and brought that up the most was Member Decker. I hate that he won't be able to see any part of that to completion, but the Recreation Advisory Board has discussed the court at length at meetings over the last couple of years, have made recommendations on components that they wanted to see in that court. The original budget estimate for the court, to my knowledge, that was before me, did not include lights or fencing around the court. And also, when you get these bids from folks, a lot of times it doesn't include the subgrade work. So they want to give an initial quote for the court, but that doesn't include any of the subgrade. So the initial budget amount that was in this year's budget to do the multipurpose court was based on a part of grant from 2 years ago. It was $40,000. We received information back from 4 companies when we solicited quotes from them. The lowest bid to include the lights, the fencing, and the grading prep work for the court, which you see the contract in your packet, the information you got, was $51,553.70 for the court and fence, both items, and then an additional $13,750 for the lights. And even if you consider the light component separately from the 2 companies, they still came in lower with lights because we asked for that part to be broken out. So in order to move forward with the multipurpose court in the spring, which is the optimal time to construct the court based on the weather and the curing of the subgrade, we would need a budget amendment in the amount of $25,000 to move forward with the multipurpose court with this bid. The second item in these amendments are for the big grant, or is for the big grant, I should say. There was a budget shortfall of $51,000. We met with the North Carolina Big Grants Coordinator in late November, and then the engineer and apparent low bidder entered into some value engineering conversations. Those adjustments, along with the marine sewage pump out grant in the amount of a total of $26,040, as well as taking out $15,000 from the parent low bidder for contingency, got us to this $51,000 shortfall number. David has provided you guys with an additional memo that prepares a budget amendment to recognize both the revenue side of that grant for the marine sewer pump out, as well as the town's cash match. Mr. Lou Kudajar asked a couple of questions of me over the weekend, and since it was via email regarding stuff that was already a published agenda item, I'd like to address those out loud for the benefit of everybody. Question 1 was, when did we get the marine sewer pump out grant? July was the initial award letter to make us aware. The fully executed contract in October. Number 2 was this ever mentioned at town meetings? The answer is yes, in the August Parks and Recreation Advisory Meeting, and it is in those minutes. Number 3 and 4 were combined about the dollar amount and the cash match. The dollar amount for that marine sewer pump out grant is $19,530 from, the letter says DENR, but the new name is DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, and $6,510 town match from the town. One last note under that section on the big grant. In those same minutes for the Parks and Rec Board meeting, it's reference to the bathroom. And when we first talked about the modular restroom, the time estimate was 16 weeks. However, when the estimates for this came back so much over and it was going to be brought to the board, we contacted the modular company, and they had fallen behind and not started construction yet. And until you guys can make a decision on whether you're going to fund the docks or not fund the docks, we found it more fiscally responsible to wait on what size building we were going to actually put. We will need, and we are under contract for a bathroom, but it would depend on if the docks went through about the laundry and shower facility. So that's why we don't have a bathroom yet, for anybody who's asking where's the bathroom. And then finally, the third component is to decide whether to accept this part of grant that we were just awarded. The contract for the town's match is $183,374 to fund a picnic shelter, kayak launch, splash pad, shade structures for the playground, and secondary amenities as outlined in the contract. Each one of these components affects the other, so I implore you, if you do not fund the big grant, a budget amendment, do not accept the part F grant, because we will not have anything to hook those kayak launches to. And then the part F grant paperwork has to be returned by January 20th, so basically we need to get to a decision on that tonight to accept the contract or not. And then as far as the supplemental memo with some more questions answered, I believe that David has some additional information.
Yes, that memo actually has the budget amendment for the marine sewage pump-out grant as part of it, but I did want to give a rack-up for the board's and the public's benefit as to where we are now from where we've come from. To date, the money that's been spent is an amount of $174,257, and that is broken out as $40,807 on the playground. Those were donated funds from the Holden Beach Property Owners Association. The Rothschild Davis line, which encompasses the bulkhead that's been constructed, the bocce courts, preliminary permitting design, and stormwater, that's $117,929. And then pretty much the preliminary expenses for the boating infrastructure grant at $15,520 is what we have experienced there. So again, that's a total of, we're into the park program for $174,000 as far as expenses. As to where these, the park is being funded from on the town side of contribution, that's coming from the occupancy tax or the B-Part fund, and any of these other new requirements or proposed budget amendments would be appropriated from an unobligated fund balance in the B-Part fund of $5.6 million. That total amount for all four of those budget amendments, new money on the table, is $265,884. That's the town's portion of for those new programs or for the new new proposals. The question, when has it got to be done? The big grant was March 31st of 2016 is the completion date there. And so the real question is what's the all-in amount for the whole park out there, and the different combinations of the grant funds, as opposed to the town funding is, town's number is $699,045. The matching grant funds of the various Part F grant, the boating infrastructure grant, and the sewer pump out grant is $302,900. The total program on the site out there is $1,001,945. So I just wanted to make sure that we got all of that out there, and all of these programs had their basis in, we started about 3 years ago, I believe it was. Chris May actually facilitated the layout of the different elements in the park. That layout had its basis or its nexus in the Parks and Rec Master Plan that was created prior to that as part of the initial standing up of the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we are and where we've been.
If you would, if you have the information there, can you explain the monies that came from occupancy tax versus the taxpayers' real estate tax that they pay?
The B part.
The 6% collection, gross revenues, the occupancy tax, town collects an occupancy tax of 6% on gross revenues from rentals. We turn around and give the county's Tourism Development Authority a penny of that, retain 5%, and the other 5% is split 3 cents and 2 cents between tourism-related expenses, which can be just about anything related to tourism expenses, not just promotion, it's not just advertising. And then the other 2% is for erosion control.
Where I'm trying to get you to go is for the people to understand that money that's coming from B Part Fund.
Is going back into B Part functions,
Yeah.
activities.
So it's not your real estate tax money.
Yes.
Okay.
One last thing I forgot to mention, but just for the benefit of anybody that may not have seen it in any of the information, one of the things the Parks and Rec Board kept circling back to was looking at the Brunswick County Parks and Recreation Courts, and the person that gave us this bid is the one that does all the county courts and comes highly recommended, so.
Okay. Would you state again, you need a motion tonight because you've got a deadline on the 20th?
For one of them,
Yeah.
the court is because if we want to go with this contractor that does all the county courts, then we need to get on his spring list because he's gonna be doing courts in the area as he's told us. And yes, we've gotta move forward on the other two. So, I mean, they can all be considered separately because they're separate budget amendments, but we need to take action tonight.
I think so we had to do it by tonight because it was due,
The part of
By
grant contract
the
is due
20th.
back by January 20th.
so we
Right.
have to do that.
Everybody understand what we're trying to do?
Yes.
So if you're so inclined to make a motion,
So you need this much.
So
Yeah.
there's three,
There's four
There's-
budget amendments.
four, okay.
There's four budget.
Four is for the
we have to do them
three that's
separately?
here listed, and the fourth one being the court.
The fourth budget amendment is the one for the marine sewage pump out
Ah,
grant.
okay.
Mhm.
Does it need to be done separately?
I believe it would be okay to do them all
Collectively.
four.
Okay.
Could do all together?
I make a motion to approve all 4 budget amendments.
I second.
okay, motion made and seconded to approve all 4. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I understand that this project had its genesis back even, I guess, May 2012 was where the Parks and Rec Master Plan, that was dated. I will say I was impressed with, I did, 1,225 surveys distributed. Of those, 612 surveys were returned. A remarkable response. And I did check against this to see how many elements of this plan or of this construction aligned with the public's viewpoint at that time. And there's a high degree of correlation, so that's good. I'm glad we've had a discussion here on the B-part funding for this, that it did come, that part came from the occupancy tax, so that's good. I will say I'm reluctant to support this amount of money, given that we have threats to the island that we are now aware of I'm not saying we weren't aware of it before, but we've certainly been highly sensitized to it with regard to our sewer system vulnerability to storm surge. We had the benefit of looking at that, and I will say we have a highly competent group here, our Public Services Director and staff. That's a real threat. The and I won't go into that, but that's what I struggle with is the, to me, that's a need and this is a want. Having said that, I have one more comment to make because we were given this to act on, so we're acting tonight. I realize grants are probably going away, and I have opinions about that, but for what it's worth in the future, I would like to see grants and components of those grants to be not interspersed the way they were with this one, because as we've heard, the kayak launching cannot occur per that grant unless we have the boat docks, which are part of another grant. So, we're kind of obligated to approve them all or nothing, which is not a position I like to be in, but we're here and we'll act on it. I do have a question, though. The pump out, I was glad to see the marine sewage pump out grant, that appeared to be a 66-33 split. They paid for 2/3 of it. I do have a question, though. Do we know what the maintenance costs are going to be year to year on that? Because this grant merely installs it, but is this something our staff is going to, Public Works group is going to have to deal with, and do we know what that estimated cost is?
We don't.
Wear and tear and storms, who knows?
Do we know what the longevity of that, and for Dave and I was talking about that's pretty much a shrink wrap pump out. Do we know the life service of that? I mean, the bottom line is it looks like this train's left the station, but this is another budget impact we're gonna have to look at going year to year forward for maintenance. And then last question I have is, understand what was the basis or what was the intent of having lights for the multifunction court? Are we going to have limits on how long, is it going to be all night long if somebody elects to play? I mean, what was because this, and there are no other lit facilities there now, correct?
There are currently no lights out there.
Right.
It was to include nighttime play, but as the rec board has discussed it would be either lights on a timer or it would be established that it would cut off at a certain time, and I think 10 o'clock was discussed.
Okay.
Lighting was also discussed for the safety of those people, especially the children walking around at night over there.
Okay. That's all my
I just have, in one comment, you're talking about the sewer vulnerability. I agree, there's a tremendous vulnerability there, but I don't believe we can use Part B funds to fix that vulnerability. I believe that's gonna have to come out of ad valorem taxes.
Two different barrels
It's
of money.
statistic,
Well,
I don't know about that.
I don't either.
That's a discussion.
Yeah, I don't,
That's a discussion that is subject to debate and interpretation of the way that the law is written.
because if
And
the law
that's
is
at
written
the-
that way, then they should have paid, Part B could have paid for it a long, long ago when it was put in. It all came out of taxes.
what I read is that it included that. So I agree, we have to determine if that's the
It's
case.
at the commissioner's discretion on how they want to interpret the term tourism-related functions.
Because it could be used to pay for police officers.
Right,
Yes, ma'am.
Or anything
extra,
extra
please.
during the summertime.
It is.
So
right.
Yes.
But
Expenses incurred above and beyond the normal operation of the town. The money can be used for it, not normal operations of the town.
Right.
Nor extending services to the normal operation of the town.
I do think that this is a whole lot of money to spend, and anytime you spend this kind of money, you have to take it slowly and very carefully consider why you're spending that much money. But after looking at everything, I really feel like it will be a benefit to the island. It will draw people to us, increase our tourism. It will increase our image It will be a nice addition to the island, and I think we will reap the benefits from it.
Yeah, I agree, and I also agree with your concerns about unknown expenses that it may be a part of the sewer system. But my comment is, a lot of work's been done with this. It's part of a master plan, so a lot of effort's been put forth. We've already invested $174,000. A lot of work and effort has gone to get the Part F grant. And if we ever decided not to do this, we'd probably not be able to go to that grant funding again. So I agree it'd be a nice addition, although it is a lot of money to spend.
I think it's also highly visible. You already see when you come across the bridge, you see the playground being used, you see the grassy area there. I think when people see that coming across, it's going to be one more thing that they say, wow, that's Holden Beach. So I think we've done a lot of work on it already. It's a very plus thing, and I would very much support we finish it.
You ready to vote? I don't mean to push you, but breakfast time's coming. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Madam Clerk, we have a unanimous vote on that.
And you would also need, as related to that item, you'll also need to approve the award for the big dock construction.
Yeah.
So if you would make that
Yeah, we can
motion
do
to
that, yeah.
Richardson Construction.
I'll make that motion for the big dock
Second.
construction.
Everybody understand the motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I have the similar question with that. I didn't state it earlier, but the maintenance on the dock's going to be an ongoing cost too, just so we're aware of it.
Okay. Didn't mean to cut you short.
Sorry.
But did we vote?
We did all,
I'm sorry.
Did you vote yes?
Yes.
I thought we had all four, David.
David?
It's a unanimous vote,
It's a
Madam Clerk.
unanimous vote.
Okay. Can we just clarify that item 18 is approved in its entirety?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
yep.
Yes.
And
It had to be.
That's contrast to budget amendments.
Everything.
And everything,
Yes.
The whole shebang.
and for the manager to execute the appropriate paperwork.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay? Are we good?
Consensus, is that,
Yes.
Unanimous.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right, number 19, discussion and possible revocation of Resolution 11-12. No action means you continue to support the position town's already taken. If you want to do otherwise, we need a motion.
Well, I have a comment, if I could. There are a lot of questions I still have about the terminal going, and it's demonstrated by where there are communities who have been in our position and have rescinded or reversed course. We heard tonight, comments regarding the benefits of terminal groins. I've also heard that depending on the location and the specific currents and composition, the tidal effects of that particular area, there are a lot of questions that we still have. So I would like to hear more information and, before we commit totally to something that has a lot of questions. The modeling that went into that showed the benefits, there was wide variation between each of those models, and I have yet to hear, when I just asked a simple question, is there a net positive benefit to the terminal groin, considering the amount of sand replenishment it offsets? And I've yet to hear an answer that says yes. And I'm not saying that those answers aren't available, but I'd like to hear more. We've talked about a noise ordinance and having people come here to demonstrate a decibel meter. Well, this is of orders of magnitude more importance and of more expense. And with the estimates being that I've heard 5 million to 35 million, that's, I know in my former business, I wouldn't have been allowed in the room even to consider that. So I guess that's where I am, and I feel that there are a lot of our citizens are in the same position based on what I've been hearing. So if I understand no action means we continue, but I would like to add an action beyond that, and we bring in someone who has that expertise so we can ask the same questions that I've asked in other forums to get some answers, or at least get some. I understand this is not a perfect science, and with anything there are probabilities of success, but I think there's more information needed.
I agree, Ashley. The last time, there wasn't an opportunity to ask questions, so I agree we should have a public forum, and I'd like to see pros and cons as a public forum, and everyone ask questions, us and the public ask questions. Because there's other communities that are in the same process. I know in 2 weeks, I plan on going to a public discussion, the Rich Inlet, Save the Rich Inlet, talking about figure eights, terminal groin. I'm going to go to that. We've been, but we need to not rely on everybody else's actions. We need to have the public forum here and let our community in this discussion. But my understanding is this is on the agenda as a vote of confidence for continuing with the permitting process. It's not a yes or no, build a terminal groin. And we have $500,000, I think that's what you said, David, already committed, sunk into this permitting process. So we're at the finish line in front of us. And I think that's all we're saying. Is to continue with the process of the permitting. And in the meantime, get as much information as we can possibly if we finish the process of the permitting to decide whether to build the terminal groin.
What kind of timeline do we have? Is there a time when we have to make a final decision? Is there a date for the permit?
Well,
I kind of want to know those parameters.
Okay, let me put it this way. The town doesn't have a decision on whether they're going to get a permit. The only decision you had on getting a permit for the terminal groin is to make application to the Corps of Engineers, because it's a federal permit. So the Corps of Engineers,
And we've already done that, right, David?
and that's what the resolution before you is to make the application. And that's what we've done. That's the process that we're in. We're in the Corps of Engineers permitting process, according to the NEPA process. So once a permit decision is rendered by the Corps, yes, you have a permit, or no, you don't have a permit, that decision is based on the best alternative. So if it's not a good alternative, if it doesn't answer your question, we're not going to get a permit. Okay. So once we get a permit, which, as I understand it, after the phone rang off the hook when folks saw that this was on the agenda, especially the third-party contractor, by the end of the year is when we should have a permit in hand. At that point in time, I think it's where the town would be in the position to make a decision on whether to fund it or not, to build it. You got to get the permit first, because you're not going to be able to build it without a permit.
And that permit is good for 5 years?
That's fine.
And part of what the Corps of Engineers is looking at and doing is deciding whether it make financial sense to even do it. Because it may not make financial sense to do it. And that's
And-
part of what they're looking at.
And if it does not, if it's not the most practical, least damaging, I think that's the paraphrased term, you won't get a permit.
Can we get the Corps of Engineers, like they were, the same people that were here last time that were only accepting comments, can we get them in to answer questions?
Maybe, probably not. I'll have to, and here's why, and here's why, is because the process for, the NEPA process is so highly defined and regulated, subject to scrutiny, held up, to court, actions. They're real particular about varying from, there are specific timeframes that meetings have to be held in relation to one another. I will ask, but I think that answer is going to be no.
Let me just say this, and I'll try to make it brief. We've done all this. We had the Corps here in this room. We've been through all the processes you're asking now that we do. We've done all that. The ball is in the Corps' hands. They just simply are gonna say, yes, you're gonna get a permit, or no, you're not. We don't really have anything to do with it at this point in time. So, as David was saying, they've got time slots, hearings that have to be held, the ways the hearing the way the hearings are held, all that's spelled out. We have done all of that, just like Ocean Isle did it, and the other neighboring islands that are going through the same. We all have to do the same thing, same way, and the public has had the opportunities. And now it's in the Corps of Engineers' hands. Now, we can ask and invite all the people we want to, but they don't have to and may not be allowed to come down here again. Just like you're talking about going up there to see what they're doing, we've already been through the process, you're going to see it.
But it's not the Corps of Engineers, and there's so many questions about that document. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it is the Corps of Engineers.
No,
The
They
meeting,
came here and
No,
held
that I'm
hearings.
referring, that I'm going to.
Oh, the one you're going to.
It's not Corps of Engineers.
it's a non-governmental organization that's hosting a meeting.
I can tell you the crowd that's going to be there.
Oh, yeah. That's why I'd like to hear both sides.
Well, I'd like to say, I don't want anybody to confuse my statement about I have questions. That doesn't mean I'm against the terminal growing. I said before elected that I support the concept of a terminal growing, the central reach, anything that's going to protect the beach, and especially something that would reduce the erosion to where we aren't just putting sand on the beach and it erodes away. So I hope no one misconstrues what I've stated and quotes me that I'm against it. I'm not.
One,
But there is a report that has been produced specifically addressing a lot of these, so in essence, if you didn't have the opportunity to ask the questions, that is a fairly comprehensive report. It's based upon not only what we've had here in North Carolina, but as well as in Florida. So that should give you a super nut perspective on that, and you can see that without having to invite anybody to read that.
one of the big concerns I have is if we send the message from Holden Beach that we are now teeter-tottering, don't know whether we are wanting it or not wanting it, that does not weigh well with those that are evaluating we're gonna give them a permit or not. But anyway.
Has the Corps ever said no?
Has the Corps ever said, yeah?
Well,
No, the
Corps
Corps-
hasn't presented a final draft impact study. They haven't even responded to the feedback they haven't done a final draft. They haven't responded to the feedback yet.
We understand that.
Right. And I don't think a permit can be applied for until that's presented.
The process is ongoing. That's what I'm trying to say. The process is ongoing. We either continue to support the process, or we send a message up there, oh, we're having second thoughts, or oh, no, we're against it. That's, I don't know how to say it.
Well, I'd echo Ashley's comments. I support the process. And I don't, and I don't, it's not a reflection of, you know, whether I support the process of whether I want to, you know, ask questions. I definitely support the process.
I have one final question. And a statement. I support continuing with the process to get the permit. I understand you can't do anything without a permit. However, we've already spent $500,000, I'm hearing. In the big picture, though, $500,000 in a $5 to $35 million project, that's typical. What additional costs are we projecting out by end of year, when sounds like the closest we could get the permit? Do we know?
David mentioned that earlier, 100,000?
We're 75% of the way there on a $424,000 contract, so that's
Okay, so a
318.
couple $100,000 more, okay.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no motions, we're gonna move forward. Is that all right? All right, number 20, we've already done, town manager's report. Is that where we are? Yep. Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. I have two things tonight. The first, would like to announce that this is unofficial. We don't have the confirmation yet from the Board of Elections, but it is my understanding that the Emergency Operations Center will be hosting the next election for this area. We've got to get.
Don't have to wear boots.
Yeah. Even though it's out of the precinct, there's been special consideration given for it, and it's my understanding that the primaries will actually be held over there. So we'll get the formal word from the Board of Elections, and some more specifics will come out to you shortly. But I think that's good news. Latest status on the DOT beautification project on the bridge. Advertisements will be posted 16 January, bid opening February the 4th. I believe start date is March the 7th, finishing by May 28th, depending on where the bids come in relation to the state's budget for the project.
Speaking of beautification, you want to mention the fountain, the new fountain out front?
Yes.
And Dolly, we actually got the lights fixed out there too. So yeah, the fountain on the way in is a courtesy of the beautification crew. It's pretty nice.
David, you mentioned DOT. I believe they're the ones who have to replace our city limit sign that's half there now on top of the bridge. It's been that way for 6 weeks or so.
I personally called them about a week ago, but they're pretty slow to respond.
Well, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago to David, and he's been driving by it for 3 months and hadn't noticed.
Hadn't
so.
seen it.
I tried to go outside there, we would try to.
So they're aware of it and working at the typical pace. Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
The Holden Beach sign over at the intersection of
No, on the bridge.
Old Ferry Connection and Sabbath Home Road continues to get stolen
Yeah.
every year, several times a year, so. But anyway, I just realized that I should have made this statement earlier tonight, in regards to the P&Z. I had a phone call from Mr. Burris. Madam Clerk, is Mr. Burris's name on the P&Z?
He's an alternate,
Mr. Burris was switched from a regular member to an
an
alternate.
alternate member.
Okay. Well, I forgot I had written my note. He has some serious family health issues, which is going to require that he be gone a lot. And he has requested to have permission to be relieved of that obligation until he's going to be here. So, well, he's still in a position, and he's asked to be relieved of that. So we need to go back and send him a thank you letter for his services, and ask you commissioners to appoint somebody in his position. And didn't we kick somebody off again while ago?
Tiffany.
Can we appoint Tiffany Hobbs that we just elected and then kicked off?
Yes, and if you just want to do that by consensus, that
That
would
sounds
work.
great.
Yes.
Is that all right with everybody?
Great.
That's
Yes.
good.
So
Yeah.
put Ms. Hobbs back on. As of 10:35, and hoping that we can make it for 20 minutes before we have to remove her or something. All right. The next thing that I want to give you an update, and I'm on a highway committee deal. Anyway, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that NC 130, Ocean Boulevard, and you understand that's a NC DOT road. And the paving, the resurfacing of that is on schedule. Now, Mr. Hewitt, help me here, is it 19 or 17?
17.
17. There's only one problem. We got it on the list to be done, but it hasn't been funded yet. But we've got a baby step going toward a happy ending. So if anybody says nobody's doing anything, well, this has been an ongoing project for several years of begging and pleading, and it is officially on the list. So let's just hope that we can get some friends to make sure that that gets funded.
Can I just add, since they're finally gonna do it, we've always talked for years and years about on the south side of paying a little bit for that pavement so that we had two sides to walk and run on. Not gonna happen.
Lost that battle.
Well, we won the sidewalk.
The bike thing is,
Well,
help me out here,
we
mister. Pardon me?
Yeah.
We continue to beg and ask, but so far DOT doesn't think that's a wonderful
No,
idea.
I meant the town pay for the extra 5 or 6 feet as the county or as DOT is doing the road.
I'm 100% agreement. We will continue to beg to be able to do that.
We'll just keep begging.
Okay.
You know you need to cry a little. Whine a little.
Oh, so even if we fund it,
They're not in love with it.
they're not loving
But they got, he could work out. He can whine.
All right. I'm gonna shorten my report. That's it. What you got?
I've received feedback in this month since last meeting, and I've listened to it, and I appreciate that feedback. And I am pleased with some of the actions we've taken tonight and the discussion we've had. I think it's been healthy. And I do want to publicly apologize for the action and the statements I made last month with regard to the chair of the P&Z committee. That was, well, I'll just leave it at that. I apologize for that. And I'm pleased with the action we took, removing those restrictions, which I still stand behind. I think it's important, if you can, to remove any perception of any unethical behavior or any perception of conflicts of interest, but I clearly see where I overreacted there, and I'm glad we took that action today. That's all I have, Mayor.
In lieu of time, I'll just thanks everybody for coming. I think we did do a lot today, had a lot of interesting discussion, and I too am pleased with the outcome of everything.
Thank you for comments. We've got lots of emails, letters, cards, calls, whatever. We're open for feedback, both good and bad, and it's been mixed. So just keep it up. We try to be open, transparent, think it through. If we make a mistake, we try to correct it. But we thank you for being here for tonight. It's a long night.
He apologizes. The floor is yours.
Thank you for coming and staying so late this evening. I also want to take this time to thank the town employees because they spent an inordinate amount of time with us this past week, showing us around everywhere, leading us down into the pump stations and explaining their jobs and what they do. And let me tell you, we are beyond blessed by the people who work for this town. They take such good care of us, and I am very appreciative of the time that they spent with us and their willingness to answer our questions and to work with us. I think they are not praised enough. And I found out they do things that I bet you have no idea that they do. So I'm kind of hoping in the future, maybe we can take, you know, I'm not on a night like tonight, but in the future, maybe highlight a few of those staff members from time to time to let you know more about what they do. Because they are humble people and they're not going to come out and say, look at me, see what I've done. But I think the commissioners can do that for you because they are phenomenal people. So thank you very much.
Okay, I want to start out by thanking the Parks and Recs Department for all the hard work they've done. A tremendous job. I am very, very pleased that the board took the actions they took tonight to continue with the efforts that you started. I think that is a very good thing. I want to thank Chrissy again for all the hard work that she does. She's a one-man band in the rec department and does a terrific job, terrific job. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and all the people that volunteered to be on the boards, because that's not often an easy job to do, is be on the boards. And then I have a statement that I need to read. Per a conversation with the Cape Fear Council of Government, I was advised that I needed to make a public statement for the record to distance myself from some of the actions taken by this board. After being elected, but prior to being sworn in, the newly elected board members had several meetings that I was not part of. This is not a problem until they started taking actions on these meetings prior to being sworn in. At this point, they potentially violated the public meeting law. They contacted an attorney who they instructed to write ordinances. They negotiated a contract with an attorney to be our interim attorney because they called the town attorney and told him they needed to turn in his letter of resignation. Again, all this was done prior to being sworn in. I was also told by one of them that they planned on removing 3 members of P&Z, but based on my reactions to hearing that they had asked the town attorney for his resignation, they delayed these actions. Since I'm not a judge or a juror, I cannot say whether this was a misconduct of public office, a violation of Article 31-14-229, acting as an officer before being qualified as such. But what I do know is these things were done without a potential open meeting. In making this statement, I'm letting everyone know that that this issue was taken, if this issue was taken to the district attorney by anyone, that I was not part of this and should not be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor and not be removed from office. And that's all I had to say.
All right, now it's time for public comments on anything you want to talk about. Ms. Sheila.
Can I say one thing?
No, it's not right now.
Oh, I didn't say it.
You can in just a second.
Sheila Young, 193 Brunswick Avenue West. Sitting here tonight, it seems to me that someone from the outside was brought in to attempt to chastise the new board members, and I'm very disappointed. Excuse me. When it's your turn, you can speak, Ann. I told the board members when they took their seats they would need their sense of humor. They may need more than that. I hope this doesn't start to sound like national politics. That would be a shame. Thank you for agreeing to serve.
Yes, sir.
Can I talk about enough, or do I have to?
You got to come over here and follow process.
All right. I'm impressed by the whole bunch of you, okay? So I think you showed working together. That's all we need to see, is that you're going to try to work together. And just keep it up and we'll get good results.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
You're
Anyone else? Well, how many hours have been here? 6:45 and 4 hours. Does anybody make a motion that we adjourn?
We'll want some. We'll want some.
Hey, wait a minute, hold it, hold it.
Will Carter, 108 Starfish Drive.
No more than an hour, Will.
I really do want that terminal growing, or else we're gonna have to ride down the Little River to theirs, or up to Southport to theirs. And we'll have nothing but a sand pile out here, and our canals won't flush. So if you guys can get educated on this thing, let's go ahead and move it out, let's get it done.
Thanks, sir. All right, consensus is we are adjourned. Thank you for being